Parishes often get them. You can get them at a discount Matthew Kelly or Dynamic Catholic Books. They are not for resale, so people pass them around a lot. This one is called Slowing Down to the Speed of Joy, the Simple Art of Taking Back Your Life. It says here, Matthew Kelly has dedicated his life to helping people become the best version of themselves. He's the author of more than 40 books, including Life is Messy, I Heard God Laugh, The Rocking Chair Prophet, Holy Moments, and The Fourth Quarter of Your Life. His books have been published in more than 30 languages, have appeared on the most prestigious bestseller lists, and have sold more than 60 million copies. Which is funny because they're not for resale. Normally parishes buy them in bulk. So take that as you will. His website is www.matthewkelly.com. It says you can also get it from Blue Sparrow as an audiobook and as an ebook. This one was published in 2024. Anything else there? Nope, this was the first edition. The table of contents is set up just the way we like it, right? Nice and easy and clear. The prologue is The Jar of Life. Part 1, Beyond the Joyless Urgency. Part 2 is Human Flourishing. Part 3 is The One Thing. And Part 4 is The Secret of Life. There are many subheadings under all of these, and you're given the page numbers for those as well. Speaking of page numbers, they are in the bottom center of each page, which indicates to us it's really meant to be read sequentially. So although they have a great table of contents, they expect you to read it from beginning to end. The prologue says, The Jar of Life. You may have heard this story. It's been woven into the fabric of our culture. But the untold truth of the story is what we need today. See if you can spot it. Once upon a time, there was a university professor who wanted to teach his students the importance of prioritizing how we spend our time. The professor stood in front of his class with a large glass jar and several rocks on the table before him. Taking the empty jar, he began to fill it with rocks. When all the rocks had been placed in the jar, they reached the brim. Is the jar full? He asked the students, and the class agreed that it was. Reaching under the table, the professor brought out a small bucket of pebbles. Pouring them into the jar, he shook it gently, allowing the pebbles to make their way into the space around the rocks. Is the jar full? He asked again. It looked full, but his class was reluctant to agree this time. Next, the professor took a box of sand and added it to the jar. Shaking it gently again, he allowed the sand to settle into the crevices between the rocks and the pebbles. Is the jar full now? He asked. The students were still a little dubious, but agreed that it was, all except one student. Why? The professor asked. Standing up, she walked down towards the front of the lecture hall. In her hand, she held a bottle of water. Taking the cap off, she poured the water into the jar, and the water was quickly absorbed by the sand. The other students laughed and cheered. Everyone now agreed the jar was indeed full. The professor then reached beneath the table, retrieved another large glass jar, another bucket of pebbles, another box of sand, and placed them on the table before the class. May I have a volunteer? The professor asked. A young man raised his hand, was called upon, and made his way to the front of the room. This time the professor emptied the box of the sand into the jar first. Now see if you can fit all the rocks and pebbles in the jar, that he challenged his volunteer. The young man placed half of the rocks on top of the sand, and the jar was already overflowing. He tried to dig into the sand with his hands, but only made room for one more rock. He stood there thinking for almost 5 more minutes. He stared at the jar and the rocks still on the table while his classmates shouted out suggestions. Impossible, the student finally exclaimed in frustration. And he was right, of course. The jar is your life, the professor went on to explain. The rocks represent what matters most, the big stuff. If there were no pebbles and no sand, the jar would still be full and your life would have plenty of meaning and purpose. The pebbles represent the other things that matter to you, but are not essential. The sand represents the things that are urgent but not important. The moral of the story is that you begin with the things that are urgent but not important. You won't have time for what matters most. It was a lesson in time management and priorities. It's a great story, but it's incomplete. It teaches a powerful lesson, but opens us up to a vast error. I heard the story as a teenager, and the error contained in the story took deep root in my life. This is the error. If you are better at managing your time, better at prioritizing your daily activity, you'll be able to fit everything in. But it's not true. It doesn't matter how hard you try. You will fail. You are never going to fit everything into the jar of life. And here's the thing. That example is used in so many youth ministry settings and retreats. It's kind of become a joke. Where it came from, we don't know. I read this partly because that's the tone of the book. You can hear it from Matthew Kelly. He speaks to you as one friend to another. That is a great gift of his. In the book we were just talking about, we were talking about friendship in the child Jesus, right? So let's go over those chapter titles again. Beyond the Joyless Urgency, Human Flourishing, The One Thing, The Secret of Life. And so he's going to give you some advice along the way. How does he have the subheadings? So his name is always here, the title of the book always here. You don't always see the chapter title, but you will see the subheadings when you come across them. What does a chapter heading look like? Let's see if we can find one. Something here. So here's the different parts as well as a big chapter heading. Lots of tiny subheadings. So the one thing is that the name of the section or a chapter? Let's come back. That is part 3. So the next one is Life Isn't Supposed to Be Hacked. So that's actually maybe a chapter heading. He doesn't have chapters. He has part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. They aren't given numbers out as chapters. They just look like subheadings. So that might be a little bit confusing. But those subheadings are only about 1 or 2 pages, front and back. They're not terribly long, maybe 3. They're not terribly long, so you could read them fairly quickly. Lots of modern things in here. It talks about Bill Gates even. Lists, most popular videos on my YouTube channels are lists. 24 regrets of people who are dying. 4 toxic everyday habits that are killing you. 9 ways to tell if someone is a narcissist. 10 things you should never say to anyone. People like lists. So it's very practical theology if this is something that you're looking for. Some people aren't crazy about his tone. They don't find him challenging enough. He takes it as a very basic level. And I will say that. The description here says, I was living my life like a Ferrari with no brakes. Matthew Kelly spent 30 years rushing from one thing to the next, leaving one thing early, arriving at the next thing late, squeezing in as much as inhumanely possible into each day, always striving for more, better, and faster, but then something changed. Slowing Down to the Speed of Joy is a deeply personal book. It provides a rare and intimate look at the author's own struggles with busy and urgent. By revealing his own vulnerability, Kelly provides us with practical insights and timeless wisdom necessary to banish busy and urgent from our lives. And that is his style. He is very vulnerable in his books, and he does give you very practical wisdom. And I will say that some love him or hate him. These books are here. There is some value in reading them. Some people can read them in a day, and some people take a year to work their way through what's contained within. Matthew Kelly, Slowing Down to the Speed of Joy. In the name of the Father, and Son, and Holy Spirit. Have a blessed day.